Is presence natural or can it be learned? Hello, I'm Malcolm Cox and thanks for joining me today on the Sunday Sample, episode 44 for Corporate Worship Matters. And today we're talking about the whole issue of presence. If you lead worship, if you're up there in front of a group of people, how important is presence? And if you don't have it naturally, can you learn it? Well, I do believe it's important. I'll say that from the outset. I think we're sadly mistaken if we think that we can lead any group in corporate worship without paying attention to the issue of presence. For sure, some people have it more naturally than others, but it can be learned. And I know this and I believe this because I'm told today that I have presence when I'm leading worship, and it's certainly not something I was born with. I did not have much presence as a child. And when I first started performing as a youngster, a young chorister, singing in public, doing readings, various things I did when I was a child, I didn't have any presence. In fact, I wanted to be anywhere other than in front of people. I had buck teeth to my front two teeth stuck out like rabbit teeth. I've had a lot of braces and dental treatment through my preteen and teen years, braces and all kinds of things. I felt very self-conscious about my presence in general, and in particular, my facial appearance and my teeth, most of all. And so when I was in front of people, I felt very uncomfortable. And if that carried through into my adult years, going to university, doing opera studies, and then joining the church I'm now with, the movement of churches I'm with, and learning how to lead worship in a different way than I had when I was younger. All these things have taken a lot out of me, and I've had to learn more and more about what it means to have presence. Now, what does it not mean? Presence doesn't mean, look at me, aren't I amazing? It's not about ego. It's not about being handsome or beautiful. It's not about how you dress or how you walk exactly. It's something rather more than that. It's about some kind of spiritual authority. But that spiritual authority comes not only from just being a spiritual person yourself, which is essential, but it also comes from believing that you have been called to worship and therefore behaving in front of people as if you believe it. The person who says, yes, I'm called to lead worship, but wanders around the stage, moves slowly with their head down up to the microphone and doesn't look at people, either the rest of the worship team or the congregation, that kind of person has no presence and they can't lead. They can't lead because they don't believe they can lead. So it's not just about the physical, and the physical has something to do with it, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But first of all, it has to be something that we believe in, that we have been called to lead worship and that we are being equipped by God to do so. That's the first and most important thing. But then the second thing is this. What do we do if we feel like we don't know how to have that presence, how to create the right sense of confidence in leading people? Not confidence in ourselves, but in the leading of people in corporate worship. What do we do then? Well, I have a few tips for us here today. But they all come under the one heading of you've got to put yourself out there. You cannot learn this stuff by just watching somebody else, your hero, the person who does it well. You can't learn this by watching a YouTube video like this one or listen to a podcast like this one. You can't learn it just from reading a book. You've got to get out there and do it. Stand up, walk into the front of the auditorium or wherever you are. Pick up that microphone, pick up that songbook, pick up that guitar, look people in the eye and get on with it and get some feedback. But you've got to do it. You just got to dare yourself. You've got to take the risk, trusting that God is with you. He won't let you down, right? So trust God and put yourself out there. Now, a couple of specific things. Firstly, if you're going to have presence, you've got to be communicating. And if you're going to communicate, you've got to look at people. Not stare at them like I'm doing at this camera, but looking at people. Now and again, look at people here and there around the room. Don't let your eyes just glide over everybody, not looking at them. And don't stare at people for long periods of time. Makes people uncomfortable. But do make eye contact around the room as you lead worship. You say, well, I'm going to lose my place. I've got my songbook and I'll forget the words and I'll forget which verse I'm on or where the chorus comes. And yes, you might. But I'd say actually, that's not as bad as not making the connection. If you don't make the connection, you're not leading people. And we're up there to lead people in worship. Risk forgetting the next verse or the next line. You probably won't. I vividly remember when I was doing opera studies, I did a theatre course as part of it, and we learned a script, or part of a script, and part of the process, and other people who've done acting will be aware of this, part of the process is putting the script down before you finished really learning it. And I remember the director saying, right, put the scripts down. I said, I haven't finished learning it. I don't know it well enough. He said, that's not the point. You just need to get on with it. And it was amazing. Once I put it down and I started interacting with the other actors, I realized I actually did remember much more of the script than I thought I did. And this is what you find in leading corporate worship. You're leading a song, partway through the verse, you're not quite sure what the next verse starts with, but don't look down, because you'll be carried along by the congregation who know the song, by the rest of the worship team who know the song. Don't worry about that so much. Be much more concerned with the connection. Now, there are ways to help yourself with the next verse, the next chorus, and that is, of course, you can glance down. So you've got your book, you're reading, you're getting towards the end of the song. Have a quick look down as you're singing, and look at the first line of the next verse. That's all you need, just the first line. This song here, I know that my Redeemer lives. Right, the first verse, I know that my Redeemer lives, never prays for me. The chorus, I know that my Redeemer lives, is the last few lines, last few words. So I'll look down perhaps, I know that my Redeemer lives. And as I'm singing that, I'm reading the next few words, he wills that I should wholly be. And I'm ready, and I'm looking at people before that verse begins. He wills, and off we go. And the same thing at the end of the verse, or at the end of the chorus, look down the next few words. I know, and I'm off into the third verse and the fourth verse. So you can glance down, but don't stay there, and take a risk. Try leading a whole song without looking at the songbook once, or if you've got a song sheet in front of you, without looking at it once. I'll bet you can do it more than you think you can. Honestly, give it a go. And if the congregation think you're very confused, that's okay. They'll cope. But this connection is so important. So take the risk of not looking at your song sheet notes, at your lyrics, as often as you think you do. That's the first thing. The second thing is to smile. Making that connection and having presence, a smile really helps. If you're scowling because you don't realize you're scowling, but you're scowling because you can't remember the words and which chord comes next and what's happening now, you've not got any connection. So smile at people, especially before you start a song. Stand tall, walk tall. Men and women who walk tall, stand tall, will be able to communicate and connect better, because people can see you. You're opening up your body. You're opening up yourself to say, I'm vulnerable up here, but I'm willing to be vulnerable with you if you're willing to be vulnerable with me, because a lot of people in our congregations feel vulnerable when they sing. Those of us who lead worship, we're often a bit more comfortable with that vulnerability of singing or playing instruments and being in public, but our congregation is often feeling a lot more vulnerable than us, so we've got to make ourselves vulnerable so they feel more willing and able to be vulnerable themselves. It's like a compact between us and the rest of the congregation. So be tall, open yourself out, and it will help that connection and your presence in front of people. And the last thing I would say on this is move slowly. It's a little bit amusing, but rather distracting, when sometimes you see people scuttling around the stage at a church service because they're next up, and they're scuttling around here and over there rather quickly, and you're wondering why they're so anxious, because speed like that denotes anxiety and fear and worry rather than a calm, measured walking. If you're walking up to the lectern, you're walking up to the music stand, walk up there with dignity, because you are serving a great and awesome and mighty God. And if that's what is in your mind and your heart, you will be dignified. Not for the sake of it, but because it helps people to connect with you and feel confident about your leading of them in worship. And that's so much of what presence really is. Remember the goal. Your goal is to be what the congregation need you to be, not what makes you feel most comfortable. You may not feel comfortable in front of people, you may not feel you're very good at presence, but if you practice what I talked about here, you will grow in it, and your congregation will be very grateful, because they will then feel a stronger connection with you, they'll be more willing to be vulnerable, and they will enjoy it a lot more, and so will you. So let me ask you, what have you tried to help you with your presence in front of people? Have you tried some other things? Have you been schooled in some other ways? I would love to know. And if you've got any other questions about presence, please drop a note Leave a note wherever you hear this podcast or whether you see this recording. Put a note in the box below. Let's learn from each other, because we learn best when we learn in community. And if you can do me the favor of just pass the link to this recording on to one other person who might benefit, like the recording, subscribe, give us a review, I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. And I pray that when you come together with all of your friends, with all the saints next time to worship together, doing your best to have the right kind of presence, a confidence in God that communicates with the congregation. I pray that your experience of that, of Psalm 100, verse 2, worship the Lord with gladness, come before him with joyful songs. Take care and God bless.